Hey, you guys, this is Lisa Alexander with a deeper look into domestic violence, and I'm excited to have our guest tonight, Miss Whit Devereux. Hey, Whit.
Hey Lisa, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so glad that we connected. You have so much going on and amazing things. So please, I don't want to waste any time getting into who is Whit, how did Whit get where Whit got, how is Whit a best-selling author and an advocate? Please, let's talk.
Okay, again, thanks for having me. My name is Whit Devereux of whitdevereux.com. I am a domestic violence survivor as well as an advocate, a mentor, a nonprofit founder, and I also help other entrepreneurs with PR management, sponsorship coordination, and just maximizing their potential, really. So, using all of the gifts that God has given us and monetizing them
Love
and
it.
and effortlessly helping other people in the process.
Love it. So
Yeah.
please, I'm going to be interrupting you from time to time. And
Yeah,
I
no
love how you
problem.
just talk a little bit about how those are the gifts that God gave you and you're
It
teaching others how
is.
to use it. So I just love how you did that. And I know
Thank
that you
you.
started off telling us that you're a survivor. So what happened in your life? Tell us how that happened.
Well, I always have to go backwards. So I actually was molested when I was 5 years old by a family member, but I did not talk about it until I actually wrote my book. So that was
Wow.
nearly 20 years later. Um, I I struggled a lot with feeling ashamed and that maybe somehow that was my fault. And as I got older, I entered into other intimate partner relationships, but in dating relationships. So at age 17, I entered into a physically abusive relationship. And I actually got pregnant from that dating relationship. So I had the molestation at 5, didn't talk about it. 17, got into a relationship that was physically abusive. But then some years later, when I was about 21, I entered into a different relationship. And it was still abusive, but it was emotionally abusive. And I
Mm.
didn't really understand what that meant at the time. Because, a lot of times when you think of domestic violence or abuse, people think of physical, like
Right.
hitting, punching, slapping. But this time it was so different that it caught me off guard. Um,
Mm.
and it was more like talking down to me, nobody's ever going to want you. And that actually led to me having my second child. So
Okay.
5, molestation, 17, and 20. It was just like a continuous um, process of me getting into unhealthy relationships and really not dealing with the root cause of it.
Mm. Can I
But
interrupt? Can I interrupt you
yeah,
right there? I have a question.
go
Okay,
ahead.
so it's so interesting how you kind of layer that because you said at 5 you didn't tell anyone for over 20 years. And if
No.
I can just interact and talk to ladies who've experienced something similar, such as child
Yes.
molestation, and having kept that secret for so long,
Yeah.
can you just say something to them or talk to them or just how
Yeah.
was it having held that secret for so long, and how do you think it affected the decisions you made?
Well, it was a heavy feeling, and
Mm.
I actually tried to make myself believe that it really had not happened.
Mm.
And um, as a result, I suffered from depression and anxiety, always fearful of interactions with men or even becoming hypersexual. So that was me getting into these relationships, feeling like I needed to give my body in order to keep the person around, really struggling with self worth and self love, just being very insecure. And because it was a family member, I didn't want to break up my family. So that was
Wow.
another thing that kept me silent.
Mm.
And I just really was afraid. But what I want to tell people who might have experienced something similar is it's not your fault.
Mm.
I really needed to know that then. I
Mm.
learned it later.
Yeah.
But knowing that it wasn't my fault, it's nothing that I could have done differently to prevent that. I was a child,
Mm.
really helped me to be able to start my healing process. So it's not your fault. There is help available for you to be able to heal from that and process it. But the sooner you speak out about it, like the more freedom you will be able to experience in your life. So
Wow, that was perfect. Yeah, speak up about it. And I think too, you touched on a really important point. You can heal because
You
you talk
can.
about it and you get the help that you need, you know, and
Right.
the healing therefore allows your steps to be different, you know, or you to make different
Exactly.
decisions. Okay, so
Mhm.
interesting. I want to touch on something else that's really important. At 17, as still as a teenager, you entered
Right.
into an abusive relationship. So we
Yes.
have teenagers that are experiencing that on a rise right now. And I
Right.
think I was doing some research recently, and it's I think it was like 1 in 3 youth are experiencing abuse, and even
Right.
almost half of all college women, and that is just huge.
It
So
is.
so let's talk about that for a second, just as a teenager. And I know that you said you struggle with self-esteem and stuff, but talking to teenagers, if they're in something, did you recognize that it was abusive? Like what?
Well, when I was dating this person, I thought that it was like his way of loving
Mm,
me. And
okay.
he didn't start out uh, outright physically abusive. It was more disrespectful in tone and how he would talk to me. Um, it was some signs that like red flags that I did ignore. And then
Okay.
when I went back and I thought about it, and of course talked to my therapist and all of that, I realized one instance in particular, and I teach this when I do different workshops in the schools. But there was a time where we were driving in the car and we got into an argument. I can't even recall what we were talking about, but he reached over from the passenger side. I was driving, and he took the back of my head and started honking the horn. Mind you, I'm
Mm,
driving. So
right.
we could have both been injured in the accident.
Wow.
But I thought at the time, like, I was shocked. He thought it was funny, but I
Wow.
was like, I don't know how to even explain how this happened. Um, and then it would be like long periods of time before anything else would happen. So I thought, well, maybe when he said I'm sorry, that he really meant it. He said I would never put my hands on a woman, things like that. But it just got worse. It
Hmm.
escalated, and it's important, like, not to ignore those red flags or those
Right.
warning signs. Something you might think is, oh, he just, playing. No, that's not funny. It's nothing cute about that. And at the time, I thought like nothing much of it.
Right. Right.
I just thought that like he was tripping, but that was it. Like I didn't
Yeah.
address it.
Yeah.
We just acted like nothing else happened at that point.
Mm. And I think you made a good point too when you talk about the intermissions between the abusive incidences. But it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, well, he's changed. And I always try to tell people that's just a season, that's just a
It's a
silent moment. Or
cycle.
yeah, and it's just like it's
Right.
going to repeat itself. But it's interesting at that age, at such a young, vulnerable age. It's like, especially these days with social media and
Oh
everything
my
like that.
goodness.
You know, it's just so. Well, he just really loves me, or he's just trying to, keep things together. But
Right.
it's abuse. It is what it
Right.
is. You know,
Mhm.
and I'm glad that you're able to get into the schools and talk about that because
Yeah,
it's
for real. I was talking to some of the young ladies and they were like, "Oh my God," like, they couldn't believe it. And then I had some of the parents with the same reaction, and I'm like, yeah, these things are happening. And with the statistics being what you said, like 1 in 3, it's
it's
likely
huge.
somebody in this room who
Absolutely.
also went through that. So, yeah, it's definitely
Absolutely.
important to talk about.
That's awesome. You have an accent. Where are you from? Because I'm hearing an accent.
Chicago!
Okay, look, Chicago in the house. I knew I heard an accent there. That's so funny.
Yes.
I'm so distractible. Okay, sorry to be
That's
so
funny.
distractible. But okay, so then
Okay.
you had a baby with the guy you were dating at
Yes.
17. Okay.
Hmm.
So did abuse increase at that point, or did you guys break up shortly after the baby? What happened?
Well, what was interesting was when I was dating him, he was actually back and forth in jail.
Okay.
And when he got out of jail, I had just graduated from being a senior in high school. And I want to say he got out in July. By August, I was pregnant. It was like immediate. And
Yeah.
then I went to school in September. So I went to school pregnant, and like I was caught in a rough place because I had family members telling me like to abort the baby. He's telling me if you love me, you'll keep the baby.
Mm,
And neither one of us had any jobs. Neither one of us had a means to even take care of ourselves. But he would kind of guilt trip me into wanting to keep the baby to please him. And I
mm,
wanted to keep the baby just for my own reasons because um, I don't want to have an abortion. Like, no
right.
shade to anybody who
Right.
does, but
Your
that wasn't
choice. Yep.
my choice. So I decided to keep the baby, but During my pregnancy, I experienced the abuse. That's when it escalated from taking my head and the horn to now, like slapping me in my face, giving me a black eye. It was definitely a lot of different instances at that point, from me being pregnant with her and then also having her, up until she was about 11 months old. And that's when I disappeared. I like left him,
Wow.
relocated. Yeah.
Wow. Good for you on that. But you know, statistics
Yeah.
say that domestic violence increases or begins during pregnancy. So it's not surprising at all that you say that, but I
Right.
think it's important that people hear that.
Yeah.
Because you said, oh, well, that's when he started doing this, or that's when he started doing this, thinking. And people, it
Hmm.
always throws people off sometimes because they're like, wait, you're pregnant. Don't they care?
No, he didn't care.
Mhm.
It just got worse.
It got worse. So you
Yeah.
relocated. And you know, it's so funny. I'm going to touch on, where are we going to get through this? Like, I just want to touch on so many things. But you also said you up and disappeared. And I know that you
I
work with
did.
survivors as an advocate. And people think, oh, well, I just can't leave it. I was one of those people. My family, or what am I going to do? I don't have anything. But you decided that the risk was worth taking.
I had to be done. So literally at 11 months, like right before she turned 1, I want to say like a week before her birthday, I went to the mall, changed my number. I started
Mhm.
there, and I actually moved to another county. And because of his probation status, he couldn't leave the county he was in to come where I was. Otherwise, he could be arrested. And so I felt that layer of safety. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
even in that distance, he would still try to harass me. Somehow he got another number that I had, because I had a house phone too. So he got the house phone number. He would try to call that way. And it got to the point where I went back. So I moved back. I moved away, but then I let him back into my life,
Mm-hmm.
and he would like sneak out there with me even though he wasn't supposed to. So then I felt like if I call the police or I tell somebody, it's my fault because I let him in here.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through that cycle of having to, okay, I left for safety, but then I let him back in. So what do I do? And there was a point where I actually went to a domestic violence agency out where I lived, and it was like set up like a house. So it was very discreet. It didn't look like an agency or anything like that. But I
Awesome.
went and I told the lady what was going on, and she's like, "Well, I'm a mandated reporter. I have to tell what's going on if you don't go to court." But I was more afraid of him, and I didn't show up for court. And she followed through with her word, because
Mm.
DCFS sure enough came
Wow.
and got involved.
Wow.
But thank God it was unfounded, because they were looking at me, and I was finally at that point when they came away from any
Mm.
imminent danger.
So I want to touch on something real quick. And you talk about going back. You went back. You
Back,
even
yeah,
snuck around going back with him back and forth. And I personally experienced
yes,
that too. And it's hard for people to kind of hear and understand. And so can you just talk to our listeners who have been there, or,
yeah.
because it's a real thing. Some people think, oh, I just left and that was it. No.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I think the statistics even say it takes like a person 7 times, like up to
To
seven
leave.
times to leave. And my God, I was up there in number for real. I just felt like I wanted my family, and
Keyword.
that
Keyword.
it was like me preventing him from being a father to her. But his lifestyle, aside from being abusive to me, was dangerous for us to even be involved in,
Okay.
because of what he had going on, back and forth to jail even when she was younger.
Mm.
And literally to this day, he's in prison.
Wow.
And so I just, like, after a while, I got sick of it, but
Mm.
I did go back. So, yes, when they say that 7 times statistic, it is a very real thing. But there is help available. And just like I went to that agency, there are people out there that want to help you, give you a safety plan so you can leave, and have a better chance of making it out.
Love it. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Now I'm going to skip to 21 years old. And we'll talk about emotionally abusive,
Yeah,
that a lot of people kind of push under the rug or don't even recognize or acknowledge. So what happened there?
right. So I took a little time off to date before I met this person, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready now.
Mm.
This person was very, very much different. So I was used to like the street guy, but now this person is in law enforcement. So I'm thinking, oh. instead of dating the criminal, I'm dating the
Wow.
officer. So
Yeah.
I done made a better decision, but no, not so much.
Wow.
The emotional abuse for me was more traumatic
Mm.
than the physical,
Mm.
because it was like the wounds, my black eye, my swollen feet, all of that healed. But that emotional abuse, like I really believed the things that he was telling me about myself. Like nobody will ever want you. Um, it was just so terrible, like isolating me from my friends and family, saying that they're just jealous of us, so that's why they don't want you with me. Come be with me, I'll take care of you. You don't need to have a car, like you don't need to have a license, I'll drive you where you need to go. Like I was so dependent on him
And
for
he made it that
everything.
way. And he made it
Yeah,
that way. Yeah.
right. Yeah, he encouraged me that this
Mm-hmm.
was what was best, and anybody who told me different was just a hater, and they didn't want to see us
Wow.
together. And
Mhm.
it was like I said, that for me it was almost like having to reprogram myself. Like,
Yeah.
no, these are lies. Like, this is
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
truth. Just because you have one child and you have a child now with him, that doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that nobody else is going to want you. But those were the things that were drilled into my mind. And I believe for many years, even after we broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
relationship, I went back way more times than I was when I was 17.
Mm. Well, you didn't feel physically in danger, you
Right.
know?
Yeah,
And
that's what it was.
so, yeah, and it's so crazy. I don't know what it is about abusers, but I swear that they use the same handbook. I swear they do.
For real.
Because listen, the stories are so verbatim. No
Mhm.
one ever is going to want you. Oh, you don't need a car. We could share cars, or you don't need this. We'll
Right.
just,
Yeah.
do it together, or you don't need a phone. We could share a phone, or whatever the case may be. It's the
Oh, the
same thing.
phone. Oh my God, he would go through the phone, get on my phone line, so that way he could go through the phone records and he would
Yeah.
question me about every number. Who was this? Why were you on the phone this long with this person? Who
Wow.
is this? Like it was power and
Wow.
control. That's why it sounds
Period.
so similar. That's
Yep.
what it's all about.
And if
Power.
you're listening right now and you're experiencing any of this, that's not normal.
It's
We're,
not at
we're here to
all.
tell you it's not normal, it's not
No,
healthy, and it is about control. And I think
it
you made a really
is.
good point too about how it's like brainwashing, and
It is.
it is, and you literally have to untrain your everything that they told you, like relearn yourself all over again.
Right. That's what I had to do. I was reprogramming, and I had to go to therapy in order to even find out that this was domestic violence. I had never heard that term before
Wow.
at all.
Wow. Okay.
It was interesting because I went to the therapist for depression. But when I started
Mm.
explaining to her, she was asking the right questions, digging and trying to find out about me, what happened. And as I explained, she's like, no, you're not depressed because of these things. It's really because you're in an
Mm.
abusive relationship. It's the situation. And she pulled out the power and control wheel. And I had never heard of it, never seen it.
Wow.
She went round and round, and she's like, you told me that this happened. That's where this
Mm.
falls into. And that's how I even learned what domestic violence was.
How old were you at that time?
When I went to see her, I was still with the second relationship. So I was in my 20s. I want to say
Okay.
that I was like 24, 25.
Okay.
Um,
We got work to
because,
do with. We got work to do because
yeah,
there's other kids are that age and younger that haven't heard about it either. You
at
know what I
all.
mean? At all. And
Yeah,
you would think, look, I didn't know either. So I mean, I
I
get it.
didn't know at all.
But yeah, but we know now. So that
Right.
I feel like it's like a mandate. It's something that we have to do is make sure
Right.
that people learn about it because knowledge, as corny as it sounds, it's true. It's power.
It is. It is.
Knowledge is
Yeah,
power. Once you know, you're able to do something about it.
exactly.
You may not move immediately, you may not leave tomorrow, but what you now know.
Right.
You know.
And I'm so grateful she did that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I had seen other therapists before her. And they
Wow.
just would tell me, like, just journal about how you feel, which I love journaling. That's always been an outlet for me, writing. But they never really took time to dig and like ask me about me and like what happened from childhood to the present that has me sitting there with them.
Mm,
But
that's
she took
good.
her time. So it's important to find the right therapist.
Yeah, that's true. Not just any
Yeah.
therapy. And I want to hop on that too because you said therapy a few times, and I'm an advocate. I did my
Yes.
master's in counseling. I love therapy. I
Awesome.
find it to be so it's needed. I feel like everybody needs a therapist. Therapists need
They
therapists.
do,
So,
yeah.
excuse me. Tell us. I mean, especially in the African American community too, where we're getting more knowledge on it, but it's not a big thing that
Yeah.
don't talk about it. Is pray about it or go to church or whatever the case may be. So, can you tell us why you decided to go to therapy and how it helped you?
Yeah. So I struggled with anxiety and depression since I was a child. So pretty much since that happened to me at 5, I would, well, they used to call me a hypochondriac because I
Mm.
literally thought I was going to die at a young age and that I was always sick. Like I would have an upset stomach. So I would steal the Maalox pills out of the bathroom cabinet and take it to school. And like every day I was like popping these Maalox pills because I had an upset stomach. But it
This
was
is
really the
after the
anxiety.
abuse,
Yeah,
right?
at 5.
Okay. Okay.
So like as a child, I had the anxiety. I was like trying to self-medicate with, the Maalox. And then as I got older, I tried drinking and things like that. But I wanted to I want to say that I first started seeing a therapist because I was pregnant with my daughter and I was considered high risk.
Okay.
That's why. So when I was pregnant with my second daughter, I was high risk and I had her at 23. I was a high risk pregnancy because I had scored so high on the PHQ-9 assessments.
Hmm.
And when they were talking to me, it was like they asked you, how often are you depressed? And maybe you don't sleep and things like that. And I was close to being 10 on every
Wow.
question. And so I was required to, like, it wasn't a question. I had to go in order to continue to receive care at that clinic. So
Okay.
that meant that people were coming to my house and
Wow.
doing well-being checks to make sure that I wasn't suicidal or things like that,
Wow.
which I had struggled with too.
Yeah, yeah, but that's really good they did that. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that clinic was all comprehensive. Like they dealt
Awesome.
with the physical, the mental, dental, like everything. They
That's
took care of
awesome.
the whole person. But that's when I started the therapy, and that was when I first had the therapist who was talking to me about writing, which was a good thing because it put me back into what I love to do, which was always writing. That was how I dealt with the depression or the anxiety. Writing poems, writing short stories where I would like be in a whole nother place. And like I had this
Mm.
vivid imagination
Wow,
that,
that's neat.
yeah, I just wasn't where I was currently. So it was like I went through different stages. I even tried the church's domestic violence. Well, I did the domestic violence ministry at the church, but before that, they had a spiritual therapist that was there who I talked to as well.
Okay. So you're an
Yeah.
advocate for therapy
I
for
am.
sure and journaling.
Yeah,
So I know that you said you like to write a lot. I know that you have a book.
I do.
Can you
I
show
have
it to
like
us?
3.
She has
Yeah.
3 books. I know there's like
Yeah.
interjection because I kind of want to know how you got from where you were to where you are now. But we talked
Yeah.
about writing, and I think writing is such a powerful tool. So,
Yeah, so writing was what I call like the outlet to my soul. So the first book that I wrote that is like my life is not by my own, which is
okay.
here.
Yay.
And this is the book that I won the award for back in 2018.
That
Um,
is awesome.
and it really just talks about my experience. Like I turned it into what the category is Christian fiction novel. So the
Okay.
names of the individuals are changed to protect everybody involved, but the circumstances that take place are all factual. And so not by my own is actually from a scripture, John 5:30, which states in the Message version, I can do nothing on my own but by my Father who sent me.
Mm.
And so really that's just, it's like a
Yes.
two-part meaning. So I'm not alone on this journey. I'm not by myself. There's so many people who have this similar struggle or this similar story, right? But then also I wasn't alone because God was with me.
That's
He
right.
sent me here. He put me here for a purpose and he was guiding me along the whole time. Like, so not by my own is just, it's really a prevention tool, but it's also a story, because the way that I like to read is how I wrote. Like I like those
That's
page
good.
turning books.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
oh, what's
good.
happening next? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's what
good.
I hear from everybody who's read it.
Wow.
But they also learn, because I talk about how she pulled out the power and control wheel. Talks about therapy, domestic violence ministry, me leaving and going back and forth. Talk
Wow.
about all of that, because these are real things that people are going through. But they need to know at the end of it, I made it
Mm.
out.
Come on.
They can too, right? That's
Yes,
what
that's
it's
good. Could you
about.
hold it up one more time? And where can they get it?
So Not By My Own is available actually across all platforms. On my website, mainly whitdevereux.com, but Amazon, Barnes and Noble, smashwords.com, anywhere where they sell ebooks, you type in Not By My Own and it'll pop up.
Awesome. I love it. And you wrote 2 more.
Yeah, so though, like, I'm sold out. This is my copy of Not By My Own, but I actually did 2 anthologies. So after I published Not By My Own in June 2017, I followed up in July 2017 with an anthology called Unraveling the Layers, Memoirs of a Wounded Soul. And there's a group of women who have short stories, poems, and all of that. And I'm talking about my experience with overcoming abuse and teenage pregnancy, and even how being raised in a dysfunctional type of environment really like shaped all of that for me. Even talking about my experience with my grandmother, who I used to go spend the night at her house a lot, and she would be drunk. And what we would call, back then, I say, well, what is grandma doing? They said, she just back there raising hell. And so I thought on Saturdays you raise hell, and then Sunday you go to church. So I had to like learn that all
Wow.
behavior was dysfunctional. I had to unlearn that behavior so I didn't like go on and do that with my children.
That's good.
So that's the second one. They can get that on Amazon. I'm sold out on whitdevereux.com, but I am going to go back and restock. And then my third book is There's a Jewel in You, Volume 2. That's another anthology, and it's all teen moms who are now like successful. Like we all have
Awesome.
different stories, but we like walk you through the process. Some of us were like one of the moms, she was raped, and that's how she became a teen mom. It was just a very powerful, and I'm sold out of that too. Like all the books are sold out, praise
Can they get that one on Amazon?
Amazon. They can grab that one too.
Okay. What's the name of that third one?
There's a Jewel in You,
There's a Jewel in
Volume
You.
2, because they got multiple volumes. I'm on the second one.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
All right, so tell us how you got from that 21-year-old who started dating the emotionally abusive person to Whit Devereux today. Best-selling author, award-winning author, and advocate, survivor, mother, WhitDevereux.com, all of that. How did you get there? How did you get there?
So that last relationship literally took me like 5 years to get out of. And he actually used my child to try to keep me bound. Like taking me to court and trying to get sole custody of her, like the whole 9 yards. And finally, I just got tired of like going back and forth. And by also going to that therapist, that last therapist I had, she encouraged me to join my church's domestic violence ministry.
Okay.
And at first I was like, I don't know, but I started going, and I was like hearing other people's story. I'm like, oh my God, they telling my story. Like they don't even know me, but it sounds just like what I went through. And so I felt comfortable to keep coming. And when I would go, like I started going when I was with him. I would tell him, hey, I'm going to a women's meeting at church. I'll be back. I did not specifically tell him where I was going because I knew he would try to stop me. And it's dangerous to tell your abuser like what you're planning to do when you're trying to leave anyway.
Yes, it is.
And so by going to that domestic violence ministry, like I slowly but surely got stronger. And I promised God, I said, if you get me out of this and like you deliver me, you heal me, like I'll make sure that everybody knows that it was you and that they can get out too. So like what I do now is just me fulfilling the promise because God kept his. right?
I love it. Okay,
So,
wait, that's a shouting moment right there, but I'm gonna let you keep going.
right.
I
Amen.
agree.
Look.
I absolutely agree. He's a promise
I
keeping
had
God,
to.
period. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's the least I could do because it was so many years of trauma and like him releasing me from that and like teaching me different things to be healed and like keep that healing going.
Yes.
Um, I just felt like I needed to do it. And so from the domestic violence ministry, I got back into writing. I did this writing challenge in the month of November of it was November 2016. And that's National Novel Writing Month for anybody else out there writing. But during that month, you have like a 50,000 word challenge. And I'm like, well, let me take out these poems that I wrote back when I was 17 and going through that abusive relationship, 18, 19, 20. Like all the different poems that I had, I actually put into the book. And then I put my story around the poems. So
Wow.
like every time you're reading a chapter, you open up what I'm writing at that moment. So it's like I had to go
Wow.
back.
I
And it
love
was
that.
like, yeah, it was therapeutic, but at the same time, it was like, ooh, like you had to remember some things that you might have
Mm.
forgotten. So it was tough, but it was also helping me to heal
Mm.
by writing this book. And then from the book, like I used to work actually at an insurance company as a case manager. So my background is in social services, paralegal, too. Like I've done all the things for real.
Okay.
And so I was just thinking I'll publish this book and I'll keep working my 8 to 5 and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Lord had a whole different plan.
Mm.
So from the book, I partnered with those other individuals, and then those other 2 books came out. And then people want to know, well, how did you do it? Teach me how. I'll pay you. And I was like, okay. So I
Mm-hmm.
started coaching people because they would see how I promote my book or how I promote
Mm-hmm.
different events that I was being asked to do. And if you follow me on social media, you might see me say a lot like blessings are chasing me down. And it's literally a declaration that I say because that's what happens. Like I'll just be minding my business. And
Yes.
then somebody will
Yes.
be like dropping in the inbox or emailing or calling like, hey, I have an opportunity for you.
Wow. Love
I'm
it.
like, yes.
So
And
blessings
so
are chasing you
they
down,
are,
literally.
yeah. And I'm like, by being obedient, God took the book, He created the coaching, the mentorship, and then the PR, and then the nonprofit. And so I
Wow.
have mentees that I teach monthly master classes.
Okay.
It's always a theme with them in mind. Like I get their input, like what do you all want to focus on? But
Mm.
I literally have like the whole year planned out. Then
Awesome.
we meet online, just like virtually like this.
Mhm.
And then we have biannual meetups where we can come together and we can network. But it really just started from me being obedient to writing the book. Like I
Mm.
had gone to college, like when I was pregnant with my oldest, for journalism. So I always wanted to be a writer.
Okay.
I thought I was gonna have a magazine or like that might still happen, but I had a whole plan of a magazine. Like I knew that I wanted to write. And so by writing the book, it just opened up so many other doors. And like I don't really go looking for clients. People just refer.
The
And I
blessings are
thank
chasing you
God.
down.
Yes, I'm like, thank
Like
you, Lord,
literally.
for real.
Wow.
It happens like that. And I just believe in being obedient. Like it's not always easy. Like it's
Yeah.
not for the faint of heart, okay?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is full of rewards, from God because of
Yeah.
the obedience.
I agree. I totally agree with that. You said something a
Yes.
few minutes ago about keeping the healing going. And there's a
Keep
lot
it
of
going.
survivors that
Yes.
like I talk to and we have a lot of ones, some are bitter and they just like, I'm gonna be like this forever or I'll never
Yeah.
heal or
Yeah.
and I guess I'm just so hopeful. I'm like, and I know God can do anything. Of course you can heal. Of
Amen.
course you can process. Of course you can move
Right.
forward. You don't have to stay stuck because you spent 31 years in an abusive marriage. It doesn't have to end that
Exactly.
way. And so what do you mean when you say keeping the healing going?
So I have women in my group who might be years removed from the abuse, but there's like a little residue. They need ongoing support. Where I have also women who are fresh out or one I recently guided out.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to continue to do things that work. Like you don't just do it one time and then stop. Like you
Right.
have to continue the process because there may be things that might trigger you. So
Right.
how do you handle the trigger so that it doesn't set you back or stop your progress? And so some of the things that I teach the women is like about self-care, but not just taking the baths and all that. I love that. Now, like, don't get me wrong, that's great too. But I created this 21-day self-care to healing challenge. And as soon as they become a member,
Mm-hmm.
they get that 21 days. But then after that, like every Saturday, we do a self-care Saturday check-in. Ladies, what are
Good.
you doing today?
Good.
Like it
That's
didn't
good.
stop because of that 21 days. What are you doing right now today to love on you, to
Mhm.
prioritize you? Because you need that as you heal and you talk about this or you try to uncover these things. It hurts. And so
Yeah.
as you are
Yeah.
trying to work on healing, you have to do things that are going to keep that healing process going.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's so true because it doesn't
Yeah.
just because you're out of it. There could be a song that triggers you, a
A
conversation.
song.
He
Yeah.
might you might see him some more, or if you have children, oh my goodness,
Oh
forget
my
it.
goodness.
You
Yeah.
know, and
For
keep that
real.
process going. I love what you're doing with the
Thank
ladies.
you.
Can they find that on your website?
Yeah, so either or they can go right to notbymyown.com and there you'll see the events that we've had before, the partnerships that I have now,
Okay.
as well as how to join the group. And then even if you're on my whitdevereux.com site, you can click Not By My Own Community and it'll redirect you there. So
Okay. Perfect. And I know
yes.
also that you have a tour going on right now.
Yeah,
Tell
so I
us
get
about
that too. Yeah.
tell us about the tour you got going on.
Yeah, so that's part of the partnership. So the nonprofit that I founded, it is our mission to prepare our partners for taking on the community and making the
Mm-hmm.
community better. And so I have been blessed with an opportunity to partner with my nonprofit, but also help with the PR management of the Purpose and Passion Tour, which is a
Purpose and Passion
12-month.
Tour.
Yes, 12 months, 12 cities, 12 chances. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
And so at every tour stop, which starts January 11th all the way to December 5th, we're going to be at a different location giving back to a domestic violence agency in that city. And even one of our stops is in Jamaica. So if
All
y'all are looking for an
right.
international trip,
Yes. Okay, where our
that's in
Jamaican
November.
listeners at? You guys in
Yes.
November connect with this tour.
Yes, for
Awesome.
real. But then I also have a
Awesome.
partnership with the Healing Conference.
Okay.
So those are my main two partners. The Healing Conference is a quarterly conference series that started here in Chicago in 2019. But in 2020, which we are in now,
My
we
goodness.
are going to be in a different state. So there's March, June, September, and then December we'll be back in Chicago, but every month. So if you go on notbymyown.com at the top, you'll see my partners. You can click there and learn all about the conference and about the tour.
Perfect. I love it. I love how you
Yeah.
taking your pain and purpose it to
Yeah.
give back to the community, not just for yourself, but for survivors everywhere. And I just
Yeah.
have to commend you for that because it's amazing.
Thank
And
you.
as people are listening, I just want them to know that your life can be anything you want it to be. You can
It
create it
really
to be as
can.
amazing as you can. And I know, talking to that 5-year-old little girl, who would have thought that you would become
Wow.
everything that you are,
Yeah.
today. So I just commend you for that. What you guys listen, check out
Thank you
Miss
so much.
Devereux, Devereaux. Whit
Period.
Devereux, period, dot
Yeah.
com. So before we
Yeah.
end, is there anything else you'd like to share? I really appreciate your heart for survivors and being obedient to
Thank
what
you.
God has called you to do. There's nothing like walking in your purpose and doing
Yeah.
exactly what God has called you to do, and it's evident in the things that you do produce, and just the glow that you have that you're doing
Oh,
exactly
thank
what you're
you.
called to do. You're welcome. So,
Yes, I
is there
appreciate you.
anything you want to
Yeah.
share before we end tonight?
Well, I remember years ago actually going to church and hearing my pastor say, one day your misery will be your ministry.
Come
And
on,
I
Pastor.
yeah, I went home and I'm like, I believe this because
Wow.
I know that I have like so much still to do, even when I was in that abusive relationship. So there is hope for that person who might have been in a relationship, like you said, 31 years, 3 months, however long, there is still hope for you to recover. God is able.
Yes.
Just submit to the process.
Mm-hmm.
Find a domestic violence agency in your community. If you
Yes.
want to become part of mine, we welcome you. We
Yes.
have
Yes.
people from literally all over, but just don't stay stuck. Speak up, get some help, and let's just make sure that everybody know they're not by their own. That's what it's all about. Not by my own.
Awesome. So can you please, thank you for that. And can you please give us your website information one more time, both of them, and how they can reach
Yes.
you?
Yes, thank you. So again, my name, I'm Whit Devereux of whitdevereux.com. If you need help with coaching, writing that book, that's whitdevereux.com. But even if you click there and you want to check out Not By My Own Community, there is a link. Or you can go straight to notbymyown.com, and everything about Not By My Own is there. Book, tours, events, healing conferences, it's all there for you.
I love it. I love it. All right, Whit, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Thank you
Thanks
for
for
sharing your
having
heart
me.
and your purpose. You guys check out all the conference dates they have, the healing tour, all the different stuff that they have going on Not By My Own, right?
Yep,
Community and with
notbymyown.com.
Devereux.com. You guys, thanks for
Yep.
hanging with us with Lisa Nicole Alexander for a deeper look. See you later.
Bye.